Chapter 4. On May 20th, 2006, Dusty and I had one of those marathon nights. It was recorded, and for some reason, we recorded more of this night than any other night. Starting at around 4 a.m., the camera is set up at the front of the room and it's pointed at the bed where Dusty and I were. We weren't exactly having sex at that moment, but we are in the most compromising situation you can be in a situation like this. We were sitting up and oddly looking towards the dark hallway as if we're both hearing the same strange sounds coming from down the hall. I'm intently looking while Dusty is obviously panning her focus down the hall, then over to me to see what I'm looking at. I lean my upper body a little from side to side as I do appear to hear something, but don't see it, and am trying to focus past the light in the bedroom and into the hall. Dusty notices this and distracts me by asking me something unrelated to the possibility of there being dark hallway dwellers making the noise I was obviously hearing. Her distraction worked. A few minutes later, at 4:36 a.m., I got off the bed to go grab the camera. I was going to take it back to the bed and record from a closer distance. I walk right up to it and start trying to unseat it from the tripod. This was the second instance of one of the people I was unaware of having a gun. As I was facing the camera, which was away from the bed, Dusty is seen giving someone or some people hand signals. They were just outside the door of the bedroom in the hallway, which was also very close to where I was standing and fiddling with the camcorder. The door to the bedroom was roughly 5 or 6 feet, mostly behind me. The camera was recording the entire time. It was pointing behind me, which is where Dusty was on the bed. As I detach the camcorder from the tripod and start to lift it up, a hand holding a gun waves right behind my head. The trigger and trigger guard, as well as someone's finger on the trigger, were captured on video. As this situation was taking place, which was only a few seconds, Dusty, after already waving a few hand signals to them, is pretending to have her head down, as if not to be looking forward, but is obviously looking up and beside me and grinning at whoever it was. The first hand signal was the standard upright fist gesture used to convey "hold your position," or to motion to a truck driver backing up to stop. Because I spent quite a bit of time around Dusty for 18 months then, and because of everything else that's about to happen, I'm going to promise you she wasn't suddenly overcome by a spontaneous passion for a solidarity movement, unity movement, or black power. And her facial expressions and hand gestures on this night in particular are why I compare her to Patrick Bateman, the character from American Psycho. The expression he makes when he turns and looks at himself in the mirror is an almost mirror image of the expression Dusty has as she's corralling whoever it was in the hall. And the exact moment she raises her fist, she also pretends to look into the mirror that she had on the bed. I highly doubt Dusty knew the phenomenon colloquially known as monkey business illusion, but that's a real thing, and it's basically common sense. She obviously tried hiding the signal with her arm and fist by slightly turning away to look in a mirror. Still at 4:36 a.m., within seconds of the trigger guard behind my head, she says, "I have to go to the bathroom," and starts getting up to go. By this time, I had the camcorder removed from the tripod and started following her into the bathroom, recording her as she walked in and sat down on the toilet to pee. She sat down and started telling me about her pee fetish, and I was still recording her. Then at 4:39 a.m., we both heard a loud crash in the front of the house. At that moment, I had the camcorder in my hand and pointed at Dusty as she was sitting on the toilet. "Did you hear that?" I said, startled. She said, "You didn't hear anything." As was recorded by the camera, I obviously ignored Dusty and immediately swung my arm and torso to the right, while at the same time sliding the power switch off on the camcorder, which was in my right hand, and lunged towards the door of the bathroom. I remember this moment very clearly, even now. The noise was loud. It was a solid crash, something heavy, both a crash and a thud. The camcorder had a power switch that, when turned off, had a slight delay before completely stopping the recording. This meant that there was a second or two of all those instantaneous movements I was making that made it onto the tape. I was obviously in an uber-alert state of panic, while Dusty just kept peeing and trying to distract me. I ran through the bedroom and into the hall and got to the door that leads to the garage and paused to listen. That location is a T of sorts. It's close to the middle of the house. Her son's bedroom and the guest bathroom are to the left, and her daughter's bedroom and kitchen and living area are to the right. The only two doors someone would have been able to open quietly enough to not be heard were to the right. I thought the sound was loud enough to have come from one of her kids' rooms, or at least someplace close. It was too loud to have come from the kitchen or living area. The kids' bedrooms were cluttered all the time anyway, so it seemed possible that something like a toy might have fallen. I still thought it sounded heavier than what my first instinct of a toy would weigh, though. I did a quick check of both bedrooms, didn't see anything or anyone, and went back to the bathroom where Dusty was. At that time on that night, I knew there were noises coming from the end of the hallway, and that I knew Dusty had obviously heard them too. We were both looking in that direction from the bed 15 minutes earlier. I was conscious of that at that very moment when I jolted out of the bathroom, but I would not have given a lot of serious consideration to a person or people who would have had to somehow break in. Nobody is breaking into this house, and even though that's not what I was thinking at that moment, those are the things you'd have in the back of your mind when wondering where the sounds are coming from. And the other part of that scenario is, nobody in a million years would think their girlfriend, who seemed normal in most, other ways, would be helping strangers to me with guns into our house so they could watch us have sex and do whatever else they did, and to watch what Dusty did to me. I did not look under beds or behind doors, or in every possible place someone could hide. I wasn't looking for human beings. I was looking for something fallen, and maybe a person. On this particular night, May 21st, 2006, another first happened while we were in the middle of this rock wall freak-off. Dusty was a smoker. She didn't smoke in the house, but she liked to smoke while we'd mess around in bed. Although that didn't happen every time, as I recall, it wasn't novel. Sending me to the store at 5:02 a.m. to buy cigarettes, however, had never happened before. I need cigarettes. If you go to the store and get me some, I'll do something special for you in front of the camera while you're gone, she told me. I got up and took a quick shower. I wanted to rinse off before putting clothes on and getting in the car. The camera was still recording. The entire time I'm in the bathroom, Dusty is on the bed, half-heartedly playing with a sex toy, upright and on her knees, while looking towards the door of the bedroom. She is whispering to whoever is there, and they're whispering back to her. The camera recorded it. What I mean by half-heartedly is, Dusty is obviously more focused on her conversation with whoever was in the hall than on the sex toy, black in color, phallus in shape. I understand the images and ideas this story conjures, and I'm sorry about that. Me including the pee fetish is a fact, is on a videotape, and I can prove it, and is a fuck you to Dusty Renee Miller, who brazenly committed these crimes and got away with it. However, I'm trying to be as clinical and maybe academic in every other scene description as I can, so as not to turn this into something salacious. It's not, and one scene I'm not going into detail on this night, only 5 minutes before this is taking place, meets the definition of rape. It is not salacious, it's aggravated second-degree sexual assault, likely involving minors. This is the story I'm telling. Unfortunately, the other parts are necessary to construct the scene. Again, sorry. After drying off and putting on some clothes, I walk out of the bathroom and into the bedroom and say something to Dusty and head towards the garage. At 5:04 a.m., I walked out of the door that led into the garage and got in the car to go to the closest gas station to buy Dusty cigarettes. The video of Dusty with her deviant guests is what I will first discover 9 months after. I returned at 5:39 a.m., and Dusty and I resumed our marathon sex. Most people would call what was going on kinky sex. And yes, we used meth the few times per month we did this. And yes, we recorded ourselves with a camcorder. Please don't let those sins and vices get in the way of the illegality of what's taking place in that room. You can dislike me as a character in this book, I understand that. But if this still has your attention, please know the rape goes from literal to metaphoric very soon. You know, that second victimization part. The next weekend was Memorial Day weekend. We had planned on going to my parents' house, but Dusty had a work emergency which kept us from going. On one of the mornings that weekend, around 2 or 3 a.m., an off-duty Dallas police officer shot and killed a guest of a resident at the apartment she managed, the ones I used to live in. Apparently, the tenant lived in a second-floor unit, and he and his guest had been drinking and were being loud, and one of them threw a chair off the tenant's balcony. The off-duty police officer had just been hired by Dusty a week or so earlier and was living there. This is a common practice by apartment complexes, trade security for rent. The off-duty cop was sent to the scene by the apartment after hours call center. The cop wound up shooting the guest after some altercation happened. This was a pretty big thing for Dusty to deal with that weekend, but not really anything to dwell on after a few days. That may sound insensitive, but it's not intended to be. This incident will matter later, as I'll explain. It's worth noting now for the sake of chronological clarity. It was a tragic situation that made the Dallas news, but it was work stuff for Dusty, and we didn't talk about each other's work very much. A few months later, in early August, Dusty and I both had family court dates. Dusty's was to finalize her divorce, and mine was a lawsuit I had brought against Kara over visitation. My court date was a civil trial. I had also been making the trip to pick up the girls on my weekends and had recorded them as they were all dry runs. Kara was still tampering with visitation. I sued her and won in August 2006. I was now going to be able to see my girls again on a regular basis, at least according to the judge's orders. The judge in our case told Kara very clearly at that August hearing that she was not to tamper with visitation again. He said that even if I was late and the girls refused to go, she was to go into their rooms and physically drag them out to my car so I could take them. Moreover, he told me to take charge and walk into the house if they didn't answer, and if I knew they were there. He wasn't buying her story, and he made that clear. He also told her that if I drove up again and was not able to take them with me, all I had to do was call the court coordinator and tell her, and he would issue a criminal contempt order and have her arrested. He made clear that the reason for that was to prevent me from having to pay any legal fees to my attorney. I could go straight to the court, and Kara would go straight to jail. I started seeing my girls again. It was not to last, sadly. A few days after the visitation trial, I received an email from Dusty on a personal email account I had. We mostly texted, so emails were a little uncommon. The subject of the email was, "Meet gay men for hookups now," or something like that. It was also forwarded as the standard FW was in the subject line before the great news about meeting gay men for hookups. The message she wrote was, "What do you have to say about this?" I responded, "Where did this come from?" She didn't reply. I dug deeper and saw that she had forwarded an email that she found in my spam folder to herself, then forwarded that message back to me from her and asked why I was looking for gay hookups. Good thing she didn't find the Nigerian prince emails, I guess. But there was a problem here. She didn't have access to any of my emails or anything like that. I didn't have access to hers, either. Except for the 2 red flags that would tell anyone that this person could not be trusted for anything. I trusted her. I'm like that. Still, how did she get into my email account? At that time, email providers were still passing senders' originating IP addresses through to the recipient in the header of the email. An IP address is like a phone number in that it identifies the location of the device that's using the network. In this case, the internet. I checked the IP address and found that the email originated from my friend's apartment, who still lived at the apartment complex that Dusty managed. He was a coworker of mine. We both worked at the phone company. By that time, he had transferred to SBC Internet Services, which also had control of Yahoo, as we had bought Yahoo by then. He was a senior support technician. My personal email account was a Yahoo one. Dusty still worked there during the day. Before we go full Alex Jones conspiratorial here, I need to point a few things out. The implication above is that Dusty went to my coworker's apartment with the intention of making something up to accuse me of, like trying to hook up with gay guys, and used my credentials to get into my personal email account and was able to forward the message that way. She would have had to dig into my spam folder to find something that sounded bad that she could accuse me of, and somehow they were able to crack my password and were able to because of my coworker's position at Yahoo. But I don't think that works out. Even at that time, I think Yahoo email passwords were encrypted. I don't know for sure, but if they were, Dusty would have had to get my password at home by using something like a keylogger. Or maybe she just learned it by watching my keystrokes whenever I typed it in. If the passwords were not encrypted, or there's something else I don't know about, my coworker and Dusty broke the law, among other things, and got my password out of some Yahoo database and broken that way. I am positive the email originated from his apartment. I am also positive the email came from Dusty's personal email account, which meant Dusty logged into her personal email account from my coworker's apartment in order to forward the email about hot gay guys that she accused me of wanting to hook up with. The date my spam email was forwarded to Dusty was also on the same day and time as when she forwarded back to me. Incidentally, my coworker is gay. They weren't having an affair. This happened in late August 2006, right after our court dates. This was also an obvious red flag, as if Dusty is hacking into the spam folder of my personal email account to find hot gay hookup emails to accuse me of having knowledge of things were probably not going as well as they could have been. We barged ahead, but not for long,